Elections aren't really won at the ballot box, but beforehand, in the campaign. Nowadays, winning the narrative is what counts. Good evening, my name is Maia Mazurkiewicz, and welcome to the anatomy of disinformation. Accordingly, campaigns exploit various tactics and techniques and run hand in hand with influence operations. Some are foreign, others are domestic. But can they really influence elections? Elections in the Czech Republic wrapped up in early October, and many were openly saying disinformation was heavily used during the campaign. Researchers have found that the volume of fake news spiked as early as February 2022, which just goes to show how important laying the groundwork in the information space is for real-world operations. With our guest, we'll talk about whether disinformation influenced the elections in the Czech Republic.
Benjamin Zeeb, Managing Director, Alliance4Europe. He is the director and founder of the think tank Project for Democratic Union. He has extensive experience in research, international relations, policy analysis, management, and public relations. Mr. Zeeb is a historian, journalist, and author who has written on European affairs and international relations.
Benjamin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Maya. It's always fantastic to see you.
It's a pleasure. And well, today we're talking about presidential elections in Poland that passed a few months ago. However, well, some of the disinformation or influence operations are just visible now, or you're presenting the report where you're talking about it. And were the influence operations persistent in this election campaign?
Well, it's always persistent, and I think that is the point. So we can't really say we found this huge new thing that was going on during the Polish elections, or for that matter, during the Moldovan or the Czech elections. The thing is, we turn our eyes towards this issue of foreign interference and election meddling right when it happens. But the truth of it is, it's really a constant drip, drip, drip that goes on year-round, so we might have a bit of an observation bias. In general, we did see the same kind of influence operations that have always been around for at least for a couple of years: Operation Overload, Operation Doppelganger, the usual reuse of state media, Russian state media, Belarusian state media, and that is just a persistent and constant fact of life these days.
And it is happening not only in Poland, but in many other countries. But was there something very specific for Poland in these elections?
So what makes Poland specific is that there's a pretty high degree of polarization in the electorate, and that opens the opportunity for disinformation campaigns and these tactical operations to exploit these types of weaknesses. So in terms of narratives, you will see a lot of stuff like Tusk is corrupt or Ukrainian refugees are ungrateful. And this is not then stuff that happens in a vacuum, but that sort of happens in the context of an existing political debate, but is getting amplified and weaponized by actors using CIB, so influence operations, both domestic and foreign.
So the tactics, techniques, and procedures, they're pretty similar in all the countries, but the narratives are much more specific to the country, right?
Exactly. So this is precisely what we see happening. So we see a lot of ad campaigns that are funded by sources that are not entirely clear. We see these types of doppelganger operations where you essentially copy an existing media outlet and then spread disinformation using this name and pretending it's somebody else. We see the kind of operation overload tactics where you aim to destruct an event like the election, and this happened, for example, in Poland. It also happened in Moldova, where you have these terrorist threats that are suddenly, fake terrorist threats that are suddenly being published, and all of that is, with the intent to disrupt the election process, but also to lessen the trust in the existing institutions.
And if you're talking about doppelganger, that is a network, right, as well of that is being inspired by the Russian GRU, and they are exactly publishing in their websites or different social media accounts disinformation that you just said, like the narratives that you were saying about Ukraine, about Tusk, or are they a bit different?
Well, so essentially the way that this works is that you publish a piece of disinformation and you make it look like it is part of a sub-page of a regular newspaper. And then if you click on the newspaper logo, you will get taken to the actual site. So they don't copy the entire page, not the entire infrastructure of a news outlet. They just essentially implant one piece of disinformation into something that looks remarkably similar to the actual publication. And this is something that we have been observing for quite some time. I'm sure it's something you must have covered on this channel, given how long you guys have been looking at this stuff. And we see this very clearly traveling from country to country. So the same stuff that was present in Romania, these structures are then traveling to Poland and then on to Moldova. So it's and to the Czech Republic. So it's essentially a disinformation traveling circus that stops at each election.
And the report that you published is published thanks to the cooperation of the various civil society organizations and the researchers, but also cooperation with the government, right?
Yeah, actually, we must say that the Polish government did a pretty decent job this time around. There was the election umbrella set up. There was this safe elections program that was put on by the media regulator. You had very good efforts at education, at schools, media literacy trainings and the like. So there was quite a coordinated effort to really dampen the impact of coordinated disinformation campaigns this time around. And I would say it was quite successful, all things considered this time.
However, still there were visible as well domestic influence operations that are not that hard, that easy to tackle, in coordination with the foreign operations or not? Or they were different?
No, so there's definitely a modus operandi where foreign disinformation efforts are then picked up by domestic actors. So there's a strong correlation between, for example, Belarusian state media being then repurposed in the Polish context and spread by domestic actors. So in general, we are trying to move away at Alliance for Europe a bit from this differentiation between what we call FIMI, or foreign influence manipulation, and DIMI, which would be domestic, because it doesn't always make sense. What is really important is, how is this done, and is it done by legitimate means? Anybody can say whatever the hell they want. You can parrot the Kremlin's line all day long. That's just freedom of speech. That's not forbidden. But the moment that you start, building these types of networks of bots, or if you are exploiting weaknesses in the platform architecture on X in a way that is illegitimate or is a violation of the DSA, then it becomes no longer okay, and then we need to stand together to do something about it.
Well, exactly, like the freedom of speech is for humans. What else would you say that there's a lesson learned from the Polish elections and can be taken over for the next elections in Poland or other European countries?
So one thing that we saw is that while we are doing very well on strategy, and also I would say in general on legislation, so the DSA is actually a pretty decent bit of rules that is designed comparatively well at the EU level, there is still a major lack of enforcement. And this is not a problem that is specific to Poland necessarily. This is the case in in most member states, but you need a national digital services coordinator of sorts that is then able to actually enforce these rules and ensure that the information space is safe. And then the second one is, we had Polish civil society really show up, and these guys really make a difference. But the entire sector is hugely underfunded. So structural support for CSOs working in this field is equally important.
Benjamin, I have last question about the platforms. Were they helpful, or there is still need for more push to get them on the good side?
Always push. So essentially, it is ridiculous, for example, how easy it is on X to just create an account. It takes mere minutes for a human, and you can imagine how quickly a bot can do the job. So when you have an operation that essentially attempts to hijack certain hashtags by creating hundreds and thousands of accounts and spreading disinformation under certain hashtags, there's just nothing that can be done really from a civil society perspective here. For platforms, it would be super easy. It would be extremely simple to solve this, and in fact, Blue Sky, the other Twitter-like platform, has already solved it, and all doppelganger stuff is essentially gone from Blue Sky as a result. So this is not a huge technical challenge, and could be done quickly, and it's not really happening. On Meta, you have still issues with political advertisements and not enough tracking of where that money comes from. And on TikTok, you had a lot of impersonation going on. Also, something that isn't it could be solved by the platform easily, but just isn't.
But there is a great example to follow, and what you're saying is that the cooperation is the key, and let's work for more cooperation. Thank you so much for joining.
Let's do that. Thank you so much, Maia.
More and more young Europeans are getting their news from social media instead of traditional outlets. Now Brussels is rolling out what it calls the Democracy Shield, a plan to push back against disinformation and shore up trust in democracy.
In the EU, 42% of people aged 16 to 30 now rely mainly on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for updates on politics and society. That makes social media their top news source, ahead of television. But with that comes a major risk: disinformation. 3 out of 4 young people said they had come across fake or misleading news in the week before the survey.
They believe they are digitally literate because they have grown up with smartphones. But there is a difference between using technology and using it sensibly and critically.
Despite this, teenagers in particular often consider TikTok and Instagram among the most trustworthy sources of news.
I don't think anyone can guarantee, in a world where you have nation states that are trying to interfere in elections, there's no single thing that we can do and say, okay, we've now solved the issue.
The European Commission is preparing to respond with a new initiative called Democracy Shield. The plan is designed to protect Europe from disinformation, strengthen democratic institutions, and ensure elections remain free and fair. At its core will be a new Center for Democracy Resilience.
It's no wonder that misinformation and disinformation is ranked as a top risk short term. The potential impact on elections worldwide over the next 2 years is significant, and that could lead to elected governments' legitimacy being put in question. And this in turn could of course threaten democratic processes, lead to further social polarization.
One model already exists. Finland made media literacy part of its national school curriculum more than a decade ago. Children there are taught from an early age how to question information, check sources, and spot manipulation, a system that has helped Finland consistently rank as one of the most resilient countries in Europe against fake news.
In the current global political situation, there is a lot of information out there about the Russian regime and its actions. There are a lot of Russians pushing social media material that is perhaps told more from the Russian perspective.
The Democracy Shield must take this lesson EU-wide. Regulation, education, and engagement combined. Otherwise, Europe risks raising a generation shaped less by trusted journalism and democratic debate, and more by unchecked algorithm. The big question is whether this shield will be more than just words on paper. For Europe's future voters, the test is whether it can protect facts and with them democracy itself.
Was the Polish electoral process fully secured in 2025? How was foreign information manipulation and interference visible in the run-up to the 2025 Polish presidential election? With our guest, we'll talk about the influence operations uncovered during the presidential campaign in Poland.
Tereza Kráčmarová, CEO, Fakescape. Fakescape is a Czech organization that has been developing media and information literacy since 2018 through games, workshops, and non-formal education. Ms. Kráčmarová is the winner of the 2021 European Charlemagne Youth Prize for the best project promoting European values in practice and the use of games to teach young people how to think critically and spot fake news. She has extensive expertise in disinformation, media manipulation, and critical thinking, which she combines with her academic background in political science, journalism, and information studies.
Tereza, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your invitation. Hello.
Hello. Well, today we're talking about the elections in Czech Republic and disinformation, obviously. So what was very specific for the Czech Republic during the campaign? How influence operations influenced the elections?
Well, actually, I'm not sure if we were very specific because it's happening all around in other countries in Europe too, but we had strong influence from Russia. So you could see really these narratives against Ukraine and pro-Russia. So that's something that we could also see. What were more specific narratives was that before this year, we were not able to vote from different countries, like from abroad, via post. And that's something that is very new in Czech Republic. And so most of the disinformation narratives were actually touching upon this, because the thing is that they were claiming that the election will be stolen because, you can basically just ask as many voters abroad as you want to vote for you, and they were quite like saying that the elections will be stolen from people that don't even live in Czech Republic. In the end, like we have like 600,000 people living abroad, but just like not even 20,000 registered for this post vote, and just like 10,000 voted in the end. So it was not a real threat, but it was like one of the biggest issues before the election. It kind of felt similar to what was happening in the US with the stolen election. So this kind of narrative was also very present before election in Czech Republic. And another narrative that was quite present was that there might be some military service that will be compulsory for the citizens, but again it was not happening. Nobody was actually really claiming that they will want to do that, but still there was this fear amongst the population that this can actually happen.
So it was very much about building the insecurity around the electoral processes, and also I understand that in some of the parties that might be pro-Ukrainian, for example. Well, what you're saying as well, we've been seeing that, for example, in Hungary, or as you already mentioned, the electoral processes were hijacked in a similar way in the US or a few other countries. Have you also seen some of the tactics, techniques, or procedures that were very specific for Czech Republic, or perhaps similar to the ones we've seen in Poland, like doppelganger?
So actually, one of the Czech newspapers actually discovered that there is a strong network of Russian bots that are influencing what is seen on especially TikTok, but also other social media. So we could see we could track about 300 accounts that were resharing their posts and liking and comments, everything. So they were amplifying the content, and they were trying to work with the algorithm of social media in order to reach more people. So that was something that we also saw, and it was very, very present. They were able to reach even millions of people with some of the posts. So that's something that was very hard for us to also maybe talk about.
And that was with the narratives that you said. So you were saying that there are bots spreading these narratives that they said. What did you do as the civil society, as the researchers?
Yes, so actually it was discovered quite recently, 2 weeks before election, that there is this strong network of Russian bots, so there was not that much to do. Of course, civil society and also journalists knew about that, but the problem was that it was quite hard to prove it, because it was hard to prove that it's from Russia. And also with the TikTok algorithms and its processes, it's quite hard to actually make some change, because they are not even based in Czech Republic. So it's quite hard. What you can do is, of course, you can always flag or somehow, say that this is violating the policy.
So the network is still existing on TikTok?
Yeah.
It's still there, it's spreading disinformation, it's spreading the narratives, and you were trying to get to TikTok.
Honestly, the network, it's quite hard to delete it or do something about that, because it's very easy to create another account, another profiles, so that they can spread the narratives even though you delete some of them. So it's somehow all the time repeating the same content and recreating the accounts that might be deleted at some point.
Was there any cooperation with the government? Was the countering disinformation prepared? Was there a strategy for that beforehand?
Yeah, so we have a person that is focusing on disinformation as a cooperator with our government. They were trying to prepare the society for the spread of disinformation. The problem is that the most vulnerable are the people that do not trust the government, because before election we had quite divided society, and the people that did not trust the current government were the ones that were the most targeted with disinformation. So for the government it was quite hard to actually do something about that. We also have some cases where government was trying to do some kind of strategic communication about election. They were trying to build trust, especially about the narrative when it comes to the stolen elections. So they were trying to really explain how it actually works. Why is it not a threat? But still the narratives were there, they were online, and the people that do not trust the government were targeted. So even if the government would explain quite a lot, they would not really trust it.
Tereza, what are the main lessons learned? We have just a short question to you right now. Is the media literacy the key, or what you are saying to do more right now?
Of course, media literacy is a key. The problem is that it's a long process.
So building the awareness around disinformation, and also about the issues that you were saying, about the narratives that are being spread, right?
Yes, people would believe that and also would share it quite a lot. So that's a very huge threat for our society.
So there's still a lot of things to do. Thank you so much, Tereza, for joining, and good luck.
Thank you.
Now, let's see how to recognize patterns and types of disinformation in the lead-up to elections in Europe.
Watch for emotionally charged or fear-based framing. Use cross-platform checks to detect sudden bursts of similar content and track its source. Watch for timing alignment with news cycles and emotional language. These messages are often crafted to exploit emotionally charged moments in the public discourse. Foreign actors play the same game in most countries to interfere in elections.
You are what you read and listen to. Through information, you form your opinions and shape your voting decisions. Therefore, awareness is key. Being mindful of your information diet can protect your brain from manipulation. So the next time you scroll on your phone, remember to keep calm and think deeply.